Very great to have everybody here. Thank you for making it. So today we have our speaker, Professor Dai Cook, to give a workshop about, sorry, let me just get this out of the way. The workflow of tidy data, constructing data plots, and making data-driven decisions. So before we start, I celebrate and acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodians of the land and waters from where I join you today, where the original people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and embrace their continued connection to this place. I pay my respects to all other Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders who may be joining us today. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. And for people who's like for your first Our Ladies event, we're a registered non-profit organization and a local chapter of Our Ladies Global. Our aim is to promote gender diversity in the R community in both Australia and worldwide. So our next event would be presented by Sherry. She's actually here. So stay tuned. She'll be talking about switching between space and time, spatial temporal analysis with Qubble. So it'll be on the 27th of September, and we haven't decided the location yet. So please stay tuned. And so meet our Our Ladies 2022 committee members. So with me here is our new president, Evie, and I'm the yay. I'll be the vice president, Dai, and secretary Sherry, who's not here, treasury Nikki, and members including Anna joining us online, Yuri, Kathleen, and two of our new members here, Steph and Kathleen. So a big thanks to Shazia, who was our president, has led an amazing years of Our Ladies Melbourne, and we're looking forward for another amazing year. So if you want to get in touch and support Our Ladies Melbourne, you can join the committee by making a decision about Our Ladies Melbourne, and you can, but you must identify as women or other underrepresented genders. So please check out our the Our Ladies Global for more information, or you can just be volunteer to help us to setting up the successful events like this one. So why you should get involved? You can do networking and volunteering opportunities, getting exposed to running public events, and contribute to non-for-profit organizations, have fun, meet people, and contribute to the art community. And if you want to get in touch, feel free to talk to one of us or get in touch by sending emails, or we're on Twitter, and join us via the Slack as well. So you can also find us from Twitter, GitHub, Meetup, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So if you would like to give a seminar, a workshop, or just share your experience with R, feel free to get in touch as well. And here is our amazing presenter for today, Professor Dai Cook. So I'm going to do a brief introduction first. So Dai Cook is a professor in the econometrics and business stats at Monash University. She primarily works on data visualization and has been using R for almost 30 years. And she is also the first ever speaker of our Our Ladies Melbourne. And she's been super supportive of our Our Ladies Melbourne chapter. And she gave the first talk like 6 years ago. So yay. And her research is in the area of data visualization, especially in the visualization of high dimensional data using tools, R package, with low dimensional projections and projection pursuit. So if you wanted to know more about her, please feel free to follow her on Twitter as well, and check out her professional website. And I will hand it to Dai.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me online? I'm so used to looking at the screen, I'm going to forget to look around. But I'm going to stay sitting down so the video on screen is not too crazy. So feel free to stop me anytime. And hopefully you can also work along with me on some of the materials as well. So I'm going to go into full screen. And keep the chat up so I can handle any questions, maybe. Alrighty, so hi everybody. There's what we're going to do today is download a data set from scratch, wrangle it, make some plots, and do some statistical inference. It's more fun than it sounds. There's two things you need installed. That the Tidyverse suite is always good to have, and the Nullarbor package is the other software to install. Most of you have got the materials already, so hopefully you've got the zip file with all the slides, but also if you've got the zip file, the thing to do is open up the R project. So if we go to the GitHub page, you want to open up the R project, and then the zip file has, well, zip file's got everything, but the .r file is the one to open inside your R Studio window. It will make it easier to run the code, I think. More than the Quarto slides. So feel free to stop me at any time and ask questions or make comments. Tell me how to fix things. You're welcome to interact at any time. All right, so the first thing to do is download a copy of the data set. Now, we can actually cheat. I realize that this link might not work for you, but if you've got the zip file, you'll find this file in the data directory as well. So grab a copy of the data set. It's called TB Notifications 2022 0831 CSV. So up to yesterday, it's tuberculosis cases across the globe. I can post this link in here too, I think. All right, so whoops. First time using Quarto, actually second time using Quarto in the same week. So hopefully this will work. So if you have a copy of the data set, read it into using read_CSV. It's just a CSV file. And once you have the data set in R, we can take a quick look at it, but with the glimpse function. And you'll see that it's got these columns. Country, ISO 3, year, new SP M04, new SP M514. It's got quite a few columns. I did actually remove some from the full data set. So you'll see actually I selected some of the variables just to make it a little bit easier. It has a lot more variables. So all the variables that are new underscore SP underscore were kept for now. Okay, I promised interaction, or I welcomed interaction. It's now putting you on the hot seat. Is this data in tidy form? What's tidy form? You want your variables in columns and your observations in rows. So the answer is it's no. In the columns, we've got mixed, the columns are all mixed variables. It's all hidden in the headers or the names of the columns. So the first thing is to guess what the variables are. So what are the variables in this data set? Country's easy, ISO's easy, ISO 3 is easy. Year is easy. Male and female, so sex is one, and there's one more variable, age. So 04514. If you think carefully, you can recognize that as 0 to 4, 5 to 14, or 0 to 14. It gets, the early age group gets coded in different ways in different countries, but 15 to 24, 25 to 34, 35 to 44, etc. So the variables in this data set, they're really just, oh, I've missed the year here. There's really just 5 variables. Country, ISO 3, those should be the same, but they're different encodings. Year, sex, and age, the variables. So first step is to get it into tidy form. So here's your code for, I haven't worked out how to color code nicely, but so here's the quite long-winded way to get the data into tidy form. I didn't need to do the select because I've already done that, I think. So that's not necessary. I need to pivot the columns that start with new SP into long form. So I'm going to name that column. Oh, I'm not quite used to the Quarto controls or Reveal.js controls. It's jumping around on me when I click. So I'll just use my cursor. So the names too, I'm just going to call it stuff. And then the values to count, because the values are counts for those different categories. And then I'm going to separate stuff into stuff 1, stuff 2. That's the new and SP. We're going to throw that away. And then I've got sex and age in a chunk. So throw away stuff 1 and stuff 2, and then use substring to get the rest. So the substring, we know that the first character is a single character, so we can easily extract M or F, or U is one of the alternates on some countries, but not Australia. So substring is getting the first element to the first element, and it's going to call that sex. And then age is going to take from the second element to the end of it. It can be varied length. So it's taking it to length of that variable is however long that string is. And then I'm going to throw away the, I think we don't have to actually, new code didn't really have to do that, but I like to make it explicit that we're going to throw away the original text string. And then there's a select here, but the select is only to make sure the variables in the order that I want them to be. So I want the new data to be in the columns country, ISO 3, year, sex, age, and count. And then I'm going to filter just the records for Australia, so we can look at Australia. And so if we look at the new data, so now I have 6 columns, country, ISO 3, year, sex, and age, and count. So now it's in tidy form. Another question for you, why isn't count a variable? So the variables I've got listed here are country, ISO 3, year, sex, and age. Count is a column. Why wouldn't we consider that a variable? It's just an aggregation. So this is an already aggregated data set for you. if we were sticklers for original format, we'd need to have repeated multiple rows, and then we count them up later. So the raw data would be repeated rows. So the counting is just aggregating for us. Okay, so that's your data. What would you like to know? I've got a bunch of questions here. So I'll run through those. So we've got year. As soon as you've got a time variable, we want to know whether it's increasing or decreasing over time. And then maybe, is there a difference by age? Is there a difference by sex? Is there a difference by age and sex? Is trend different by age? Is trend different by sex? And is trend different by age and sex? Any other questions we could go after, just based on the description of the data? Think we're good? Okay. I think that's pretty comprehensive. It's not very complicated data. So based on those questions, so we've got 7 questions here. If we just look at question 1, is the trend, is there an increasing or decreasing trend? What type of plot would you like to make for that? So time on, we need to look at relative to time. So time on the x-axis, and what would we put on the y-axis? Yeah, someone says scatter plot in here too. So when you've got time, you don't typically make a scatter plot. You tend to make some other, I mean, often make a time series plot, right, or a line plot. But this is count data. So would that change your style of plot? Bar chart, did someone say bar chart? Yeah, all right, so when you've got count data, using a bar is one way, and there's and a line plot is another way. We could just represent count with a dot and connect it with a line. A benefit of using a bar chart is that it forces 0 to be in your plot. And that way, you know, you're not misrepresenting any change. It's all relative to 0 as a baseline. But both are good alternatives. And we can always set an axis limit to include 0 if need be. Right, good. Hold on to that one. We'll make that one at some point. Question 6, is the trend different by sex? What would you do for that? What type of plot would you make to investigate that? Shani? We only have, yeah, we only have 2 numbers in each year now. So yeah, we wouldn't make a box plot, but we still have some of the same choices, a line plot or a bar chart. But if we have a bar chart, what are we going to do? Or what would we do? So you could stack them. And so we could just fill the bar with color related to, or put sex in the as the fill color. And then we could keep the bars the same height, I mean the height representing count. What's a problem with that one? Yeah, then we're not comparing the sexes. The primary comparison is the height of the bar. So probably we'd want to fill the bars to, I mean, make them 100% charts. And that way we're looking at the proportion of males and females on each. Okay, so there's a few options there. Got some people. Yeah, another way actually would be to facet. Good comment. So if we were concerned, if we wanted to keep count, but also keep be able to see the trend for females and the trend for males, we would facet by sex as well. It's a possibility. All right, lots of different choices. There's a little bit more cleaning that I'm going to do before we do that. So one thing I'm going to make sure of with the Australian data is just to make sure we don't have any, well, the under 15 age group is a bit awkward to work with in cross countries because it's coded differently. So I'm going to remove those under 15 for now, and undeclared also we're going to remove, just to make the analysis a bit simpler. One more thing that is a little bit dissatisfying is that I'm going to restrict the years to 1996 to 2013, even though we collected the data until just yesterday. There was a change in the way that counts were recorded in 2012. And if we look at the after 2012 in comparison to before 2012, there's a change, which is just the way that things have been recorded. I'm not going to deal with that today. We're just going to make it simple and look at the 2012. Yeah. Oh, well, first time I looked at this data was just about 5 years ago. It still had a couple of years after 2012. And it was just a consistent, I don't know, increase or drop at that time, which didn't seem right. And if you take the full data, you'll see that there's the SP stands for a sputum test, was a spit test, I think. I don't know much about medicine. And then there's another set which has got a different encoding, which is measuring in a different way. And I think most countries were using the different test type instead of the initial one. So yeah, you see it pretty obviously that there's a big change in those years, which doesn't seem real. And if you read the documentation, it suggests that there's a change. Yeah. Oh, I also put some labels for the categories. So instead of just 1524, I've got the usual sort of 15-24 to make that a little bit prettier. Okay, so let's make the, wait. There's supposed to be a plot here, but we're not going to do a plot straight off. Sorry, I'm taking you right into the deep end. So we're not going to look at any of those data plots yet. I've got some code to make a plot here, and we'll come back to that bit in a moment. So there's a code for making a plot, and it's going to be the bar chart. So you've got to take the tidy data. I'm going to group by year, and then add up the counts across, so that'll add up the counts across sex and age. And then year is going to be mapped to the x-axis, count is mapped to the y-axis, and we're going to do a bar chart. So geom_col is a nice shortcut to say I've already counted the data up. I'm just going to plot the bars to that count. So we're taking, that's for answering question 1, is there an increasing or decreasing trend? And so, so we just got a bar chart over years. So if there's no trend, what's that plot going to look like? Just pretty much straight across, maybe a little bit of up and down from one to another. All right, now I've got a teasing question here. So if I want to generate data with that pattern where we know there's no trend in year, what ways could we do that? So if there's no trend in year, and I've just got this data, what's a way to generate data where there's no trend? Sorry? Yeah, so we could take the year and just randomly sample the year, or just scramble the year. It's one way to do it. And there's probably lots of other ways to do that too, but taking the year column and just scrambling that column will generate data where we know there's no trend, right? So that makes a comparison plot for take it for our data plot, where we can see or not see any difference between the data plot and the null plot. Right, so we haven't made any plots yet, but the idea is like this one. So I don't know, hopefully this sound works. Maybe you recognize. Oh, come on. It's jumping out.
Things doesn't belong. Can you tell which thing is not like the other by the time I finish this song?
Does anyone recognize that? Some of us grew up with Sesame Street, and this was a standard game they played on Sesame Street. If one of these things is not like the other one. That's the game that we play in order to be able to determine whether what we see in the data plot is real or spurious, right? So once you've got a way of generating plots with no structure, embed your data plot in amongst them and ask yourself, if you haven't seen the data plot before, ask somebody else, which plot's different from the others. Right, so that's what we're going to do for the rest of the time. And it's so yeah, I'm still not up to showing a plot yet, but we've seen some code that describes a plot. All right, so this is a little bit longer block of code here. The first one is just what we've seen before, generating the summarized data. Using the nullable package now, I'm going to create what we call a lineup, just like those balloons where the data plot's embedded there. So it's just the ggplot string, but the data is defined now using the lineup function out of the nullable package. And I'm using a null generator called null permute. That's just a function. And it's going to permute the count column. We could have permuted the year column, but it's okay. It's going to permute the count column. This is the data set we're working with that was created up here. And it's going to generate a set of 12 plots. 11 of them are going to be the null plots. And one of them is a data plot. Same structure before. Year is mapped to the X column, X variable. X-axis, count is mapped to the Y-axis, and it's a bar chart. This facet wrap is just going to split out the 12 plots in, so 12 separate plots. And the last part here is just removing identifying stuff. So this code is embedding the data plot in amongst the null plots. And if you use the lineup function, it'll spit out a line of text like this, because the lineup encrypts the position of the data plot. So you don't know where it is if you're doing this yourself. And this decrypt will reveal the position to you once you've had a look at the lineup. All right, so let's take a look at this. Do you want to do this for like real? If you got your computer or your phone, so we're not spitting out which one we think it is, go to www.mentimeter.com. Gosh, the moment I move, and enter that code 228143 and enter your choice of which plot's most different. Oh. I don't know how this jumps into a play mode. Thanks. die. I can get back to. Everybody had a chance to make a pick? There's some collusion going over there. Right, should we look at the results? You've all made a pick. Let's see if this works. Oh, good. Alrighty, one blue dot corresponds to each of you, or to you. And so we can see there's a lot of different choices. Interesting. Oh, there's still some more choices. Someone's gone with the majority vote. But the majority vote seems to be 9, which is interesting. Okay. Well, so I'll tell you which is the data plot. It's number 4. So 2 people picked the data plot, but most people pick number 7. So the next thing is to think about. So well, there's a few things to do here. So we can calculate a statistical significance by calculating by counting how many people picked the data plot versus how many people actually made selections, right? So if I've got a number on there, but we can go to my R window and let's see if this works. I'll say library nullable. I can calculate the p-value by the 2 people that selected the data plot out of how many people made a pick? 23. And I had a lineup of size 12. Before I do that calculation, any guesses what the p-value is going to be?
So you calculate the p-value between 2.
Just 2 people out of 23. Yeah. Well, so depend if you know what p-values are, I'll explain that in a moment too. Is it going to be a high or a low one, do you think? Dade says high. We'll go with that. And yeah, the p-value is about 0.5. There's a couple of different ways of calculating it. So what does that, what's a p-value for a problem like this? So what we're calculating is the probability that if there really is no difference between the data plot and the null plots, that 2 out of 23 people pick the data plot. So it's a probability calculation. So assuming that there is no difference between the data plot and the null plots, what's the chance that we get to see that many? So you can see if a lot of people selected the data plot, then the p-value calculation would be pretty small. And so that probability gives you some indication whether the data plot is very different from the nulls or not at all different. So the 0.5 that we got polling ourselves is very high. It's so 0.5 is considered to be really high, which means 2 out of 23 is not unusual. So there was nothing in that data plot that was any different from the nulls, right? But if 10 of you had picked the data plot, then our p-value is probably closer to 0.01 or something. That would be very unlikely for that many people to have selected the data plot, assuming there was no difference. Okay, so that's a benefit of putting the data plot in amongst a set of nulls and asking to pick the most different one, because we can actually put some statistical significance on it. So the next thing to do, actually, I just asked you which is the most different. I didn't ask you which one's got trend, or I didn't point you in any particular way other than we talked about that beforehand. So we had lots of different choices here. I'm curious about the people that picked plot 7, because that's your majority. And if that happened to be the data plot, then that would have been a really interesting result, that the data plot was different from the rest. In this case, we know it's a null plot because by construction, it's a null plot. So who picked number 9?
9, not 7, right? It was like...
So 4 is the data plot. Oh, and who was picking? Sorry, it's 9. 7 is the number of people that picked it. Thank you. Yeah. So plot number 9 is the one that most people picked. What drew your eye to that one?
I think because it looks like it trends up and down, so it has a relative trend versus the others that
So you were sort of queuing into trend rather than anything else, and it's fairly smooth, and it looks like there's some downward trend. And we kind of hope TB, because we already prepped that this is tuberculosis, we might hope that tuberculosis decreases. So maybe that context has also suggested choosing that plot. Yeah. Any other reasons for selecting that chart?
We also got chance.
Pardon?
Could be by chance.
So yeah, it absolutely, any of the plots in here that has a 1 in 12 chance of being selected, but there is a tendency for people to pick on particular patterns, and it's after you set up a fairly general question like this, it's good to have some reasons for why people made that pick, and you see what they're picking that on. So I think that's great. What about other choices? So people that picked a different one, why did you make your pick, and what did you pick, and what did you make your pick from? Well, Sherry picked number 2. Yeah. What did you? Either 2 or?
Yeah, like if I had a chance to see, because there's final 11 guys.
So there was a big drop in it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It also 4 is like a left side.
Yeah. Any other? Yeah.
I 7 because of the dip in the middle.
Which one did you pick? 7, this one. Yeah.
And because I saw the dip in the middle, but then I regretted it immediately because I recognized that the other plots also had like a so I think that was a wrong choice.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So really, it's really good to get people to explain their choices afterwards to get some idea of what the types of patterns are considered different from the others. And if we were to do this for a real problem, what we would do is make a number of lineups. So you're not comparing just with 11 other nulls, you're comparing with 20 or 30 or 40 or even 100 nulls. So generate a whole set of these. One of the things with this example, I ran this same experiment a few days ago with a different group of people, and it was against a different set of nulls, which is why I said it's important. is that it's a bit smoother. For the data plot is a bit smoother than the rest, except for 9 is also fairly smooth. Yeah. And the other ones bounce up and down a little bit. That the process of generating the nulls here is assuming that you don't have any dependence from one time point to another, which is also probably not realistic. So I was a little afraid that you'd pick the data plot just based on the smoothness, which is not trend, it's some other pattern. And so if we were to generate nulls for this problem, and the actual data was quite smooth, that like there was a lag one dependency, you might want to break that first and take first differences and then scramble the years. Yeah. So it didn't work, it didn't happen here, so I didn't have to explain that, but now we have, all right, so that's the basic idea. We can calculate some significance with the plot when we have that. So let's try another one. I'm going to go back to the full screen mode. Oh gosh. I saw someone else presenting with Quarto last week, and the same thing happened to them, that it just jumps around. I don't know whether anybody's been playing with Quarto, but this is the second time, but it hasn't jumped with when I was doing this the previous time, but it's just jumping like crazy. Let's try again. Enter full screen. All right, so if we want to take question 6, so for the question, is the trend different by sex? What would the pattern be if there's nothing there in this case? And I've got actually 2 different types of plots here. So we're just going to, I'm really hoping you can read the code before I show you a plot. So let's look at what's in these charts. The first is, so I've got ggplot, year is mapped to X, count is mapped to Y, and sex is mapped to color. And I'm doing a smoother over the data set. I was going to do a point, and I've decided I'm going to take the points out for now and just look at the smoother. And I'm going to set the color, because whenever you have 2 colors with ggplot, those 2 colors are bad. So you need to reset the color scale. So it's colorblind proof. So I'm setting the palette to be a Brewer palette. So that's going to generate basically the line plot, but a smoothed line plot, the smoother. And the second choice here is a bar chart with the filled, well, they're showing up anyway, but let's still look at the code. It's a bar chart with the sex mapped to fill, and it's 100% chart. So here's my next question for you. Are these measuring the same thing? So the basic question was, is there a trend difference by sex? And you've got 2 different plot types. Are they both answering the same question or different questions? So you have to imagine the plot type. They're both answering the same question, or are they answering different questions?
We also have some answers in Zoom.
Can you say that again?
Oh no, I said that I saw one answer in Zoom as well, and there were also a couple of questions from some previous slides, just to let you know.
Okay. Oh, yes, Steph, sorry. So there's question, great. So there's some suggestions of why choosing number 9. Yep, and why did I know the data was in position position 4 because I specifically put it in a set position ahead of time. But if I was using the encrypt and decrypt, I would have been able to determine where it was. So that's, yeah, that's, I could show you how to do that, but I just knew that that was the data this time. You have to believe me. But the encrypt and decrypt will get you there, or we can fix the position as well. I think the problem may be that other might be able to move. Oh yeah, I don't know why it's jumping around.
I mean, I've downloaded my open the slides, and as you slide, it slides on my computer.
Oh, really interesting.
I love it. So I think I like jumping around and think other people are looking through this and
Huh.
it's so weird. I don't know.
Huh.
Yeah, well, the apology that slides, it's so weird. I'm like trying to figure out how that works. But that was probably because they're like you style these annotations or like it. And then it will also use so I think people looking through your slides are actually moving your slides. That's not when you share it and change the access. Yeah.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah, I've been freaking out, and I'm not sure if it was right because I don't know how, but I think that's why the slides are moving. Yeah.
All right, let's spend just a couple of minutes trying.
Maybe we can ask people not to change this live.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, that's me now.
Actual teamwork.
Wow. Wow.
It's a scary one.
Oh, yeah.
It's just really weird, isn't it?
This is a lag, but yeah. I don't know how to do it.
Okay, so don't touch the slides if you're looking at them. Okay, so let's try this one. So I'm going to argue that they're not measuring the same thing. So if we're looking at the line plots separately by gender, we're looking at the trend in counts. But if I'm filling the bars and just splitting the bar, it's looking at proportion. And so you're looking at trend of proportion. Yeah. So the original question is the trend different by sex is ambiguous. And if you really need to have a little bit more information to be clear, what do you mean by the trend? Actually, yeah, proportion makes sense because we care about whether the proportion of males and females changes over the time. That would be useful. But also we do care about the trend difference, that if the magnitude of the counts changes up or down by one group, that's also useful. So they're both doing different things. In some situations, the proportion trend might match up to the count trend, but most situations probably not. So they are measuring different things. And now the next question is, how do we set up null for this? Because this is a bit more complicated. The previous one was quite straightforward. I just scrambled one of the columns. Now I'm going to have to do a little bit more thinking about it. So if we're, let's go through. Yeah. So the top code here, looking at the line plot. Actually, so this is the line plot that's generated. So we're just showing the smoother of the counts for males and females. But to generate the nulls, So some of this is the same type. I'm just grouping by year and sex and counting to get the original aggregation. And I ungroup just for good measure, but then group only by sex and then sample the years. So what's that doing? So it's within sex, I scramble the years. Okay, so we can't just arbitrarily scramble everything because there's various dependencies. So when it gets a little bit more complicated in terms of what pattern are we trying to assess, working out which element needs to be permuted is a key thing. So I care about the trend across the sex. So I'm going to break any trend separately by the sexes. So I'm just going to, within males, scramble the year. Within females, scramble the year. All right. So once we've got that set up, then we can generate M-1 versions of this. And this is where the code gets a bit painful because you can't really do that in the nullable package because that kind of permutation's a bit too complex for what the code is there. So, but we can do it outside of that. And this data is summarized the same way as before. Yeah. And so if we now look at that data and the nulls, here's your choice of 11 different nulls in the data plot. So which of these plots, I'm going to ask specifically, which of these plots shows the most trend? And we'd be sort of looking at trend for males and females, right? And I don't have a Mentimeter here, so we can just sing it out. We only want to spend a few more minutes today anyway. What would your picks be?
I think the most trend.
Which one?
What do you mean by like shows the most trend?
Yeah, well, it's still a little bit ambiguous, right? So I'll let you decide that. Just you can make your pick and then tell me why you decided that was a trend. I've got some choices online.
Yeah, they're 3 and 7.
So 3 and 7 and 2, yeah. I love the interaction comment. Yeah, you could think about it like interactions. All right, so the choices are all over the place again. So looks like, yeah, I'm giving you lots of difficult ones, but the data is number 3. And I have to say, when I've looked at this, sorry, actually the data is not number 3, the data's now I'm confused, which is the data. I think the data is actually no, it is number 3. It's fine. But number 11 looks a little bit like that too, which is why I got confused. In looking at this data over multiple years, I always thought, oh, Australia's doing really badly among young women. Actually, this is across all the ages, but if you look at young women, it's even worse. But it looks like the trend for women is increasing. The trend for men is starting to tail off. So I've always looked at this, oh, there's a trend, but now if you embed it in these nulls where you've broken that pattern, you can't tell, right? You've just all proven you can't really tell. So whatever I was imagining in this plot, it's not verifiable. It's not supportable. Sandra's picked it up online too. But right, let's look at the other one. So this is a bit more complicated because I now need to, so it's a different way of generating nulls. Let me show you. So this is generating the bar chart. So here's the code for making the plot. Year is on X, count is on Y, sex is in the fill, and using a bar chart with 100%. So we need to work out how to break the association for that one. So as we said before, that we're looking at proportion, trend in proportion. So we need to disturb that proportion. So if there's no trend in proportion, it'll be the same across years, right? Okay, so this is one way to do that. Summarize your data and calculate the proportion for each year, and then average that proportion. Right, so we get a parameter estimate for the overall proportion, assuming it's the same from one year to another. So if we take the data for all the years, there might be different proportions across the years, but if we average them, we'll get the same. And then use a binomial. So I'm going to pass that into a binomial function. And so it's going to do coin flips and generate data, male and female, within each year with that estimated proportion. Make sense? All right, so that's a different way of generating null plots for this scenario. That's going to make sure that the nulls have no real trend in proportion difference. Okay, so let's look at the plots here. All right, so this is the last one, just pick the plot that's got the most trend. What? True?
That is very hard. Yeah, it's very hard. This is the most difficult.
I've given you all hard ones. I didn't realize it was so hard. Yeah, but I think hopefully you've got the sense of the ideas. Yeah.
Should I be asking which is the most different or which should I?
So I asked you specifically here which plot has the most trend.
Yeah.
The problem is none of them, I think, right? Okay, so flip it around. Let's ask, which is the most different? 6? Or 8? What are you picking, Sherry? 11? Okay. 12, 11, 6, 6 online. Well, the data plot is number 6. So a few people, oh, there we go. Another majority vote. So one of the dangers in using a simulation from a distribution is that the null plots can be more regular than the data plot. And I'm thinking that if you pick 6, yeah, it's a little bit bumpier. So it's likely that well, this time, as we've seen, a bunch of people did pick 6. It's bumpier. It doesn't necessarily match trend, but it's bumpier than the rest because the simulation has made it a bit too smooth. All righty, so just summarizing, putting your data into tidy form connects better with statistical thinking all the way through because you've got your variables explicitly called. And then when you create your ggplot is in terms of the variables. I know we can always abuse ggplot and sort of pack on a bunch of things in any way that we want. But if you've got your data in variables and observations and it's mapping in variables, then you can think statistically, which is fun, actually. So it does make it easier to produce effective data plots and particularly test their effectiveness, because we could make take the same data and make two different plot designs and give that to groups of people. And in one design, people might pick the data more frequently than another. And that says that plot design is more effective than the other plot design. So it's a very useful technique for testing your plot effectiveness, the design effectiveness. And the other aspect is it's a really good way to check that what you're seeing is not your imagination, that there really is something in the data plot that's different from what we might just get from random chance. So the Nullable package has those functions in it. If you want to read more, there's a couple of very nice little papers explaining how that works. And we've been through that before, and Quarto is now pretty scary to work with. So thanks everybody for listening. This has been so much fun to present in person.
So have we actually compared this confident interval with a statistics one? So if we and find the different like the confident intervals as well compared with that?
So yeah, these examples in many ways we could probably address just by using calculating some summary statistics and compute confidence intervals. Yeah, that's true. But we've done quite a lot of plots here. So if you like to work that way, that's fine. I think that's okay for a problem like this. I just wanted to really show, if you're working your way through your data with plots, how we might assess what we're seeing there. Because my normal approach is to make a lot of plots. Yeah. So
what the statistical confident interval varies between the simulation we did.
yeah, so I'm not sure I'm answering that question, but if you're calculating your confidence intervals, you then also have to adjust for all the different ones that you'd be doing comparisons with too. Yeah. I just see the typo on the slides. Yeah.
So you showed us for a categorical variable. If it's a factor variable, how do we design the null to provide random?
So if it's basically saying it's an unordered categorical variable, it probably will still be scrambling. So you still have a categorical variable and you're still scrambling the other column against that variable.
Yeah,
would
but
be.
suppose there's an order, then we have to.
So if there's an order to the categories, it's like years basically.
Yeah, suppose instead of sex, we are talking about something else, like which has a category which is younger, middle aged, and older, which is an informal category. Do we do the experiment differently?
So there's no quick answer to that. I think that's one of the things that is hard to think about generally. In each problem that you're working with, you have to think about what is the relationship that we're interested in and how do we break that relationship to generate the nulls. And so, yeah, if you've got ordered categories, I'm not sure how we deal with that generally. Yeah. Nick?
The answers seem quite sensitive to the nulls and the exact question you asked. So I guess what does that lead us to say about the interpretation?
So yeah, generically your null is there's no pattern in the data. and the alternative is there's something there, but you're not really pre-specifying that generally, but you still you're correct in how you generate the nulls can change. It can change the comparison set, the same way that whether you compare your test statistic with a t distribution or with a normal distribution can change your result. So it's sort of analogous to that. What's your comparison set that you're working with? And so there might be one where one's correct and the other's not. So that's the difficulty thing you have to work out. And the question is really important. Yeah. So generically and generally, you just want to ask which one's different, because then you're not imposing any structure. And so there may be some other structure in the data plot that is important that you hadn't picked up on. So in general, when you're working, you want to keep things very broad in that which is different versus which is not. But always give people a choice of picking nothing or picking more than one. Not picking half the plots, but allow them to pick a couple of plots, because, you know, by chance you can get things in the extremes as well. And you don't want to, and you want to take that into account. We can take that into account in the probability calculation, actually. If you've got a very specific task, so we have wanted to see how this works against a classical test, then you have a very specific question in order to be able to compare the results from doing, having people pick things versus having a t-test or something. And just to see that that actually works. That's a sort of different topic altogether, though. Yeah. Okay.
Do you always need like a group of people to do the test, or is there like any ways where you could do the test on yourself?
Can you say that again?
Do you always need a group of people to do the test? So like a group of people to make the test?
So there's power to the people. I mean, the more people that you ask, the more reliable your results are. It's just actually really, really interesting. So it can be pretty marginal structure in the data plot, but if you poll a whole bunch of people, if there's some small structure there, your end result will be that people have detected it. So we all have different eyes. So there is a danger in showing to one person. I mean, if you really have to rely on the p-value calculation for a problem that you're working with, yeah, you want to ask a bunch of people, because generally when you're crowdsourcing, we get good results. You know, that's what we base elections on, and that's the basis of opinion polling, and it's, yeah, and it's very true here that yeah, having answers by a bunch of people is really gets quite reliable and consistent results. Yeah.
Anyone from online? Sorry.
If there's no other questions, and thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.